You are sitting perfectly still. The chair beneath you is hard, polished wood, cold even through your clothes. The air smells faintly of chemicals, something sharp, metallic, like wet iron and old glass. Do not move. The photographer's voice is calm, too calm. Behind the black cloth, you hear the soft click of the camera being prepared, a quiet scrape of metal, a breath held in the dark. You keep your eyes forward, but something feels wrong. There is a weight in the room, as if someone else has stepped in, without opening the door. You don't turn. You're not supposed to turn, because if you move, the image will blur. And this moment, this one fragile exposure, is meant to capture more than just your face. In the late 19th century, people believed photographs could do something impossible. They believed a camera could reach beyond the living and bring back the dead. And tonight, you are sitting in one of those studios, waiting, hoping, and maybe being deceived. Because this is not a horror story. This is history. Second exposure. You are still sitting in the chair. The photographer has been silent for a few seconds. Too long. The room feels heavier. The air is thicker. Harder to breathe. You keep your hands still on your knees. You were told not to move. Because movement ruins the image. Because movement reveals something else. A faint, chemical smell wafts through the room again. Silver nitrate. You don't know the name, but you can feel it in your throat. Sharp, cold, almost metallic. Behind the black cloth, the photographer is no longer adjusting the camera. He is watching. You can feel it. Not looking at you. Looking past you. Sound. Soft. So soft you can barely hear it. The floor. Moving. Behind your chair. You don't turn around. You shouldn't turn around. Victorian photography requires stillness. Long exposures. Sometimes a few seconds. Sometimes longer. And in those seconds, anything can get in the frame. Hold still. His voice again. Quieter now. Quieter. As if someone else could hear. You swallow. Your throat feels dry. There's someone else in the room. Now you're sure of it. But the door never opens. That's how it all begins. Not out of fear, out of doubt. In the late 19th century, people didn't come to these studios for portraits. Not really. They came for something else. Something impossible. They came to see the dead. You are one of them tonight. You paid for this. You expected this. You chose this. Because grief does something to the mind. It makes impossible things seem reasonable. It makes strangers feel safe. And it makes a photograph like a doorway. The chair creaks slightly under your weight. You freeze. Too late. The photographer takes a sharp breath. A small mistake, a small movement, but in this room, little things matter. Don't move anymore. Now there is tension. Not anger, not yet. Something stronger. Controlled. You can feel it. Behind you, something is breathing. Or maybe you're imagining it. Victorian studios were strange places, dark, closed, filled with chemicals, glass plates, and silence. But some of them became famous for something else, something that quietly spread through London. First whispers, then stories, then faith. Photographs that showed more than the living. A man in Boston, photographer, William G. Mumler. He claimed his camera could capture spirits. At first people laughed. Then they saw the image. Frail figures. Standing behind the living, watching, waiting, recognizable, sometimes loved. And that was enough. Because once grief sees hope, it doesn't ask many questions. You feel it now. that same fragile hope. The reason you're still sitting here, not turning around, not running. You want to believe? Even now? Even when something moves behind you again? Almost done, the photographer says. But he hasn't taken the picture yet. That's when you realize something. Slowly, quietly, like a thought you don't want to finish. He's waiting. Not for you. For something else to appear. Your fingers clench slightly. You stop. Moving too hard ruins the plate. But what happens if the plate captures something you didn't bring with you? A soft whisper, right behind your ear. You freeze, completely. The camera clicks. And at that moment, you're no longer sure how many people are in this room. Silence. Then, the photographer's slow exhale, satisfied. It worked, he says. It worked? You don't move, you don't speak, because something inside you already understands. It was never just a photograph. It was an invitation. And something received an answer. The studio on the narrow street. The plate is taken away before you can stand. You hear the careful steps first, then the soft clink of glass. Then the door at the back of the studio opening just enough to let out a ribbon of colder air. The photographer disappears into the darkroom, with your image still wet in his hands. And you are left alone, or almost alone. The chair beneath you feels different now, not like a piece of furniture, like a marked place. A point where something was expected to happen. A point where perhaps it did. You keep your hands folded because you do not know what else to do with them. Your gloves are damp at the fingertips. You had not noticed that until now. Sweat. Fear. Or the residue of the room itself, clinging to the skin like the smell of varnish and old cloth. Somewhere beyond the thin partition, water is poured into a tray. A pause. Another sound follows. A brushing, a sliding, a patient, practiced ritual. Victorian photography is not quick. That is one reason it felt mysterious from the beginning. People sat still for portraits, because the camera demanded obedience. The lens did not forgive trembling. The plate did not forgive haste. A face had to be offered to light carefully, almost ceremonially, and held there long enough to become fixed. That slowness gave photography a strange authority. It did not feel like painting. A painter might flatter. A painter might invent. But a camera, people said, only showed what was truly there. And that belief would make many things possible. You hear him humming now, softly, as if he is not in the least disturbed. As if what happened a moment ago belongs to his ordinary trade. You turn your head, only a little, and look toward the studio door. The corridor beyond it is narrow. Wallpaper darkened by soot. A table against the wall with a vase of dried flowers, so faded they look dusted in ash. The front windows are covered by thick drapery to control the light, which means the entire place feels sealed away from the street. Outside, the city still moves. Horses still pass. Wheels still grind over stone. Porters still shout. Children still run messages from one end of London to the other. But here, in this dim room, time moves differently. It waits. You are not the first person to sit in that chair. The indent in the cushion tells you that. So do the scratches on the armrest where other hands have rested, gripped, perhaps trembled. Tonight, you are the one in the chair. Tonight, you are the one who came because grief made a closed room feel holier than a church. The back door opens. The photographer steps out carrying the plate holder carefully, as if he is carrying an infant or a relic. His sleeves are rolled. There is a dark stain near one cuff. Chemical, not blood. Though in the low light, for a moment, the eye might mistake one for the other. He does not show you the image yet. Instead, he sets the plate down on a side table and reaches to adjust a lamp. The flame grows. Shadows jump up the wall. His face becomes clearer now. Narrow, neatly kept beard. Eyes that look tired until they catch the light, and then they become something else entirely. Alert, appraising, commercial. You held still enough, he says. Enough. Not perfectly. Just enough. There is something irritating in that choice of word. It leaves room for blame later. Enough for what, you wonder? Enough to produce a likeness? Enough to let another figure enter the frame? Enough to justify what he is about to show you? He studies you for a second, as if he can see the question gathering. Then, with an almost pastoral gentleness, he adds, "That is often when they come, in the strain of keeping still." They. Such a small word. And yet the room seems to tighten around it. Victorian mourning had trained people to live beside such words. After death, the house changed. Curtains drawn. Clocks stopped. Mirrors covered. Dresses dyed black. Jewelry made from the hair of the dead. Rings, brooches, lockets. Hair braided into flowers and wreaths, so that the lost body might continue to touch the living body in some softened, wearable form. Grief was not hidden in the period. It was organized, displayed, disciplined, and monetized. Whole trades grew around it. Dressmakers, jewelers, undertakers, monument carvers, printers of memorial cards, manufacturers of mourning stationery with black borders. Men who knew how to measure a coffin. Women who knew what black fabric was appropriate for what degree of kinship. A widow in deep mourning did not dress like a sister in half mourning. There were rules for sorrow. Proper lengths, proper trims, proper silences. And into that carefully built world came the photograph. First as a keepsake, then as proof, then for some as temptation. He finally lifts the image. Would you like to see? You do not answer immediately. Your throat is still tight from the whisper you are not sure you really heard. He takes your silence for permission. The image is still damp enough to shine in the lamp glow. You see your face first. Pale, still, eyes fixed forward, mouth composed by effort rather than calm. The pose has made you look older, or perhaps grief itself has done that. Then your eyes move to the space behind your shoulder. And stop. There is someone there, not sharply, not like you. The figure is pale, misted, thin at the edges, as if half formed out of breath on cold glass. But there, unmistakably there, your heart strikes once, hard enough to make you sway. The photographer catches that motion, and one corner of his mouth moves almost imperceptibly. Not a smile, something smaller. Recognition. He has seen this before. The instant when disbelief does not vanish, but begins to lose ground. Do you know the face? He asks. That is the cruel genius of the thing, not, do you see a spirit? Not, is it possible? But, do you know the face? The question does the work for him. Because once the figure is offered as someone, the mind begins to search. A lost mother, a child, a husband, a sister who died before spring. The dead crowd closer the moment they are invited by name. You stare at the shape until your eyes ache. It is almost familiar, which is worse than if it were not familiar at all. Almost is the most dangerous word in the room. Almost your brother's brow. Almost your mother's mouth. almost the tilt of someone who once stood in a doorway and then one winter stopped standing anywhere at all. The photographer says nothing more. He knows silence can deepen the image better than argument. That, too, is part of the business. Spirit photography did not succeed because people were foolish. It succeeded because people were bereaved. There is a difference so large that only the unhurt fail to see it. In the 1860s, William H. Mumler in the United States became the most famous practitioner of this trade. People sat for portraits and later found faint figures beside them, figures they believed to be their dead relatives. His clients included those who genuinely hoped, those who merely wondered, and those so damaged by loss that even a blurred hint felt merciful. He built a reputation on ambiguity, not certainty. Certainty invites inspection. Ambiguity invites longing. And longing, when photographed, can resemble evidence. You hand the image back because you cannot bear to hold it yet. The photographer takes it gently, like a priest receiving something consecrated. There are times, he says, when the departed are more eager than the living. You want to ask how many times he has said that sentence. How many rooms? How many mourners? How many trembling hands? Instead, you hear yourself ask, "Did you know this would happen?" His eyes lower to the plate. I never presume. A careful answer. Not yes, not no. He sets the photograph down where the lamplight can continue to work over it. Then he reaches for a cloth and wipes his fingers with slow precision. On the shelf behind him, other finished portraits lie framed and mounted. Some are simple business cards. Others are office cards with the studio's delicate gold insignia. Below, you can see the names printed below. Addresses, qualifications, decorative flourishes designed to inspire trust. Some photographers called themselves artists. Some called themselves scientific cameramen. A few favorite titles sounded almost medical, almost clerical. As if the camera were not a machine but an instrument of revelation. Finally, you stand up. Your knees are number than you expected. For a moment you feel dizzy. The room moves, then calms down. The photographer watches, offering no support. He understands that touching a client at the wrong moment can break the spell. It's better to let the image hold him than to let your hand hold him. As you settle down, your gaze catches something strange near the shelf. A stand. Wooden. With a high back. With metal clamps. A posing stand. It's used in portrait studios to help photographers stay still during long exposures. Hidden behind the body or disguised by drapery, it holds the neck or back in place just enough to prevent blurring. You know this, or almost know it, by hearsay. Everyone knows that photographs require stillness tricks. But here, in this room, looking at the stand, after seeing the figure on the flat plate, the thing seems less like furniture than a restraint. You imagine how a mourner might sit there, how grief might already be petrified, how the apparatus might disappear from view, preserving the docility of the body. Photography requires stillness. Deception requires more. The photographer notices your attention on the stand. Some people are shaking, he says. You look at him. From nerves. From anticipation. Again, he's chosen the perfect word. Anticipation. Not fear, not sadness. Anticipation is purer, nobler. It makes the whole transaction sound almost like devotion. But another possibility has begun to stir at the edges of your thoughts. What if the studio didn't just record belief? What if it manufactured it step by step, like a stage play, performed for one person at a time? Dark curtains, Controlled silence. Warnings not to move. A delay before showing the image. A hint of presence until the evidence is presented. Carefully worded questions. It's too much to be a coincidence, and yet you can't quite dismiss the image. Because you saw it. Because something moved behind your chair. Because the whisper had weight. So the moment the camera clicked, the air in the room changed. He wraps the photograph in a napkin. "Take it home," he says. "Don't look at it too often in bright light." Another line designed to deepen the aura. Another instruction that turns the object into a relic. You take the wrapped print, because to give it up would require a certainty you don't have. And outside the studio, the city has darkened. You step down the narrow front passage, and immediately the noise of London returns in layers. Wheels, hooves, a shout of appeal, a woman laughing somewhere too harshly to be happy. It smells not of chemicals here, but of wet brick, horse manure, smoke, and the faint, greasy promise of cheap food from the stall beyond. The ordinary world should reassure you. Instead, it now seems rarer than the room you have just left. You stop under the gaslight and look around. The studio sign is small, respectable, not theatrical. The photographer's name, written in neat letters. Nothing about alcohol. Nothing overt. Such establishments did not always advertise the strangest part of their business. Often the invitation was passed on privately, from neighbor to cousin, from widow to widow, from whispered recommendation to discreet meeting. That's how things like this stood the test. Outright fraud could be prosecuted. Private pleasure travels under gentler names. You hide the wrapped photograph in your coat. At that moment, another figure appears on the street. A woman in black mourning clothes, veil lowered, gloves buttoned, her steps slow as she nears the studio door. She does not see you, or pretends not to. For a moment she stands before the entrance as if gathering strength. Then she raises her hand and knocks once. No hesitation after that. The door opens almost at once. Someone was waiting. She disappears inside. The door closes. You remain where you are under the gaslight, watching the place as if it might reveal itself from the outside. It does not. A hansom passes, its lamps glowing yellow in the damp. A newsboy runs by carrying late editions folded under one arm. From somewhere behind the curtained window of the studio, no more than a few feet from the street, you think you see a shadow shift. Not the shape of the woman who just entered. Taller than that. Still. Watching. Then gone. You tell yourself, it is the movement of the curtain. You tell yourself, glass reflects strangely at night. You tell yourself many things because the alternative would be to admit that you are already entangled. Not only in the photograph wrapped against your chest, but in the machinery behind it, in the appetite that made it possible, in the city's hunger to see one more face returned from death, even badly, even falsely, even for a price. And that is the true darkness of the trade. Not merely that someone learned to fake a ghost, but that there was a market waiting for one. You begin to walk. The wrapped photograph seems heavier with every step. Tonight you are not simply carrying an image, you are carrying a question. Who placed the figure behind you? A spirit, a trick, or someone in that room still hidden from sight? At the next corner you almost keep going. Almost let the city swallow you again. Almost decide that grief has made you vulnerable and that the kindest thing would be to burn the print without looking. But then another thought rises, slowly, coldly. If this is fraud, it is a practiced one. If it is practiced, there are others. If there are others, there are patterns, and patterns can be followed. That is when the story changes. Not when you see the figure, not when you hear the whisper, but here, under a London gas lamp, with a damp photograph inside your coat and the taste of silver still at the back of your throat. This is the moment you stop being only a mourner and begin, however reluctantly, to become a witness, maybe even a hunter, because somewhere in that studio or in others like it, someone has learned how to turn sorrow into evidence. And you are no longer sure whether what sat down in that chair tonight was you alone or grief itself. The second image that was never taken. You do not go home, not immediately. The photograph presses lightly against your chest as you walk, as if it has weight beyond paper. You keep your coat closed, one hand resting over it, as though it might shift or disappear, or change when you are not watching. London moves around you, normal, indifferent. A carriage rattles past, wheels cutting through damp stone. A man argues with a driver over a fare. Somewhere, a door slams hard enough to echo down the narrow street. The ordinary sounds of the city feel louder than before, sharper. But beneath them, something else lingers. A question. You stop at the next gas lamp, not because you planned to, because your body refuses to carry the image any further without looking. You hesitate. Your fingers hover over the folded paper. The photographer's words return. Do not look at it too often in bright light. Which makes no sense. Unless it does. You unfold it anyway. Slowly. The paper crackles faintly. The image catches the yellow glow of the gaslight. There you are again. Still. Frozen in time. Your face looks calmer than you feel. And behind you, you hold your breath. Nothing has changed. The figure is still there. Faint, uncertain, but present. That should reassure you. If it were a trick of the light, it might disappear. If it were imagination, it might shift. But it does not. Which raises a worse possibility. What if the photograph is stable, because the deception is stable? You stare at the figure longer now, forcing your eyes to adjust, looking not at it, but through it, trying to understand how it is made, because that is what this has become. Not belief, not yet disbelief. Investigation. The edges are softer than yours. The light does not strike it the same way. The shoulders do not quite match the depth of the room. It is there, but not entirely anchored to the space. You have seen something like this before. Not in a studio, in a window, at night. When your own reflection overlaps with what lies behind the glass, two images, one surface, both visible. The realization comes slowly, and when it does not bring relief. A photograph can hold more than one moment. Victorian photography was not a single act. It was a process, layered, fragile, open to interference. Glass plates were prepared with chemicals that made them sensitive to light, but not just once, not just in one exposure. A plate could be used, then used again. You lower the image slightly. Your pulse begins to change, faster, sharper. If someone had taken a photograph earlier of another person and then used the same plate again, the second image would overlay the first, faint, ghost-like. Not a spirit, a residue. You look back at the figure, and for the first time, you do not see it as a presence. You see it as a layer, a second exposure. The thought lands, heavy, unavoidable. But something does not fit. If it were only a technical trick, why the whisper? Why the movement behind your chair? Why the sense, clear, physical, that someone was standing there? You fold the photograph again. Slower this time. More carefully. As if you might damage something important. Because now there are two possibilities, and neither is comfortable. Either the image is false, and the experience was real, or the experience was manipulated to make the image feel real. You begin walking again, faster, without meaning to. Tonight you are no longer just the sitter in the chair. Tonight, you are the one trying to understand how it works. Victorian studios were not all the same. Some were honest, some were not. But a few became something else entirely. Controlled environments, curtains to block unwanted light, chemicals that could be adjusted, diluted, altered, assistants who moved quietly, or not at all, and most importantly, time. Time to prepare, time to suggest, time to guide the sitter toward a conclusion. Because the photograph alone was never enough. The moment before it mattered just as much. You think back, reconstructing it. The warning not to move. The silence. The delay. The feeling of presence. All of it, before the image was even shown. Your breath slows, not because you are calmer, because your mind is beginning to organize what happened. This was not an accident. It was staged. But then, another thought enters. Quiet. Dangerous. If it is staged, then someone had to be behind you. You stop walking. That part cannot be explained by the plate alone. A double exposure can create an image, but it cannot create a sound. It cannot shift floorboards. It cannot whisper. Unless the deception does not end with the camera. You turn, look back the way you came. The street is empty now, or almost empty. A single figure stands further down. Still. Too still. Watching. You cannot see the face, only the outline. Tall, unmoving. For a moment, your mind refuses to decide. A stranger, a coincidence, or something else. The figure takes one step forward, and in that movement, you see it clearly. A man. Real. Which somehow makes it worse. Because now the question shifts again. Not what was in the photograph, but who was involved in creating it. You turn back, continue walking. Faster now. You do not run. Not yet. But something has changed. This is no longer about belief. It is about construction. And somewhere in this city, there are people who know exactly how to build a ghost. You reach your door. Hands slightly unsteady. Key heavier than it should be. Inside, the air feels safer, but only slightly. You place the photograph on the table, do not unwrap it. Not yet, because another realization has begun to form. Slow, cold, precise. If this is a system, then it has been used more than once. And if it has been used more than once, then there are others like you. People who sat in that chair. People who saw something behind them. People who left with proof in their hands. You are not alone in this, and that means something else. Somewhere there is a pattern, and patterns can be followed, but they can also lead you back. Back to the chair, back to the studio, back to the moment when something stood behind you and did not need to be photographed to be real. Tonight, You begin to understand the first layer. But there are more. And the deeper you go, the less certain it becomes where the trick ends and where something else begins. The man who sold the dead? You do not sleep. The photograph remains on the table, wrapped, untouched, and yet not ignored. Every time you look away, you feel it, not as an object, but as a presence in the room, a quiet demand. Open it again. Look closer. Understand. Morning does not bring relief, only light. And light, you begin to realize, does not make things clearer. It reveals different details. You sit across from the table, hands folded, waiting, as if the image might change on its own. But it does not, which means the change must come from you. You unwrap it, carefully. Again. The same face, the same stillness, the same figure behind you. But now, you are not looking for comfort. You are looking for flaws, and you begin to see them. The figure does not align with the light source. Its outline is softer than yours, but not naturally so. It feels placed, not emerging, inserted. Your fingers tighten slightly around the edge of the paper. This is not a spirit. This is a method. And somewhere, someone already discovered it. London is not the only city where grief found its way into a camera. Years before this studio, before your chair, before that whisper behind you, there was a man across the ocean. A man who changed everything. William H. Mumler. He did not begin as a fraud. That is what makes the story dangerous. He began by accident, or so he claimed. A simple photograph, a self-portrait, nothing unusual, until he developed the plate and saw someone standing behind him. A faint figure, not supposed to be there. He told people it was a spirit, and people believed him, because belief was already waiting. The American Civil War had ended, thousands dead, families broken, letters unfinished. Grief had flooded the country, and Mumler offered something no one else could. Proof. Or what looked like proof. People came, one by one, then in crowds. Widows, mothers, men who had buried brothers. They sat in his studio, just like you, still, silent, hoping. And when the photographs came back, they saw them. The dead, standing behind them, watching, waiting. The images spread, quietly at first, then widely, and something shifted. Because once a photograph shows something impossible, it becomes harder to deny. The camera was trusted, more than memory, more than testimony. It did not lie. That was the belief. And Mumler built a business on it. But belief attracts attention, and attention brings scrutiny. Soon people began to ask questions. Not the grieving, others, photographers, scientists, men who understood how light behaves, and they saw something strange. The ghosts were too familiar, not to the families, to the industry. Some of the spirits had appeared before, in other photographs, with different people. The same face, reused. A ghost that did not belong to one person, but to many. That is when the investigation began. And what they found was not supernatural. It was simple. Too simple. Glass plates. Pre-exposed. Stored. Reused. A faint image captured earlier, then layered onto a new photograph. A second exposure. Exactly what you suspected. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was how easily it worked. Because the human mind does not need perfection. It needs suggestion. A shape. A hint. something almost recognizable. And it fills the rest. The trial came, public, watched. Mumler stood accused of fraud. Witnesses spoke. Experts demonstrated. They showed how a ghost could be created without a spirit ever entering the room. For a moment, it seemed like the truth would end it. That exposure would destroy the illusion. But something unexpected happened. Even when the method was explained, people still believed. Not all, but enough. Enough to keep the idea alive. Because the truth had a weakness. It could explain how the image was made, but it could not replace what people felt when they saw it. That is the difference between fact and need. You sit back slightly, the photograph still in your hands. Now you understand something critical. The image is not the deception. The image is the result. The deception begins earlier, in the room, in the silence, in the suggestion, in the moment when you felt that someone stood behind you. You close your eyes briefly. Replay it. The shift in the floorboards. The breath. The whisper. That was not light. That was not chemistry. That was something else. And now the pieces begin to connect. A double exposure explains the image, but not the experience, which means there are two layers to this. One for the eye, and one for the mind. You place the photograph down slowly. This was never just about photography. It was about control. Control of what you see, and control of what you feel. And somewhere in that studio, someone is controlling both. A soft knock. At your door. You freeze. Not loud. Not urgent. Deliberate. Measured. As if whoever is outside knows you are already listening. You do not move immediately. Because something inside you understands this is not coincidence. You were in that studio. You saw something. You began to question it. And now, someone is at your door. The knock comes again. Softer this time. Almost patient. You stand. Slowly. Every movement careful. Because tonight, you are no longer just the one who was deceived. You are the one who might expose it. And that is far more dangerous. You reach the door. Your hand rests on the handle. And for a moment, you wonder which is worse, opening it or leaving it closed. Because if this is a system, then you are no longer outside of it. You are inside. And it has already begun to notice you. The network of quiet rooms. You open the door, not quickly, not fully, just enough to see. A man stands on the step, hat low, coat dark, not elegant, not poor, carefully ordinary. His eyes lift when the door moves. They do not widen, do not soften. They simply register you. You visited a studio last night, he says. Not a question, a statement. You do not answer. Because the moment you do, this becomes something else. He waits, patient, as if silence is expected, as if he has stood at many doors like this before. Then he reaches slowly into his coat. Your body tightens, but he does not pull a weapon. He pulls a card. Plain, white. No decoration. He offers it. You take it. An address. Another studio. Different street. Different name. You should go, he says. Why? Your voice sounds unfamiliar. Lower. Because what you saw, a pause, was not meant to be questioned. The words settle into the space between you. Heavy. And why are you here? You ask. A faint shift in his expression. Not quite a smile. Not quite warning. Because not all of them agree. Them. Again, that word. How many? You ask. He does not answer directly. Enough, he says. Enough to exist. Enough to operate. Enough to remain unseen. A carriage passes behind him. The sound of wheels briefly fills the silence. When it fades, he steps back. If you return to the first studio, he stops, chooses his words carefully. You will see nothing new. A beat. But if you go there, he gestures slightly toward the card in your hand. You might begin to understand. And you? You ask. He adjusts his gloves. I am not part of this, he says, which is not the same as saying he is not involved. Then he turns, walks away. No urgency, no fear, as if he knows you will follow the path he just opened. You close the door slowly. The room feels different now, smaller. Because what was once a single experience is now a pattern. You look at the card again, another address, another studio, which means this is not one man, not one deception. This is a network, quiet, distributed, hidden behind ordinary businesses, and connected by something you cannot yet see. You place the card beside the photograph. Two pieces of the same system. One shows you the result. The other points toward the structure. You sit. Because now you must decide something. Not whether the photograph is real. That question has already begun to dissolve. The real question is how far you are willing to go. Because every step deeper removes something. Certainty, safety, distance. You are no longer just observing. You are entering. And once inside it, you may not be allowed to leave. The day passes slowly. Too slowly. Every sound feels sharper. Every shadow feels intentional. You begin to notice things you would not have noticed before. Footsteps outside that pause too long. A figure across the street that does not move for several minutes. The way your own reflection in the window seems to linger half a second too long when you turn away. It is not that the world has changed. It is that your awareness has. And awareness is dangerous. Because once you begin to see patterns, you cannot stop. By evening, you are already walking. The card in your pocket. The photograph left behind. You considered bringing it, but something told you not to. As if carrying proof into the system that created it would change the rules. The address leads you away from the wider streets, into narrower ones, less light, less movement. The kind of places where businesses do not advertise loudly, where clients arrive quietly and leave the same way. You stop before the door. It looks like the last one. That is the point. Same type of sign. Same controlled windows. Same silence behind the glass. If you did not know better, you would think nothing was different. But now you do. And that changes everything. You raise your hand. Knock once. The door opens almost immediately. Again. Someone was waiting. A woman this time. Older. Eyes sharp. Not soft like the man from before. Not calm like the first photographer. Focused. Observing. You're late, she says. Not a question. Not even an accusation. A fact. You step inside. The door closes behind you. The sound is quieter than you expect. And final. The room is different. Less theatrical. Less prepared for comfort. No soft drapery. No decorative elements. Only the essentials. Camera. Chair. Light. and something else. Something missing. You cannot name it immediately, but you feel it. The absence of illusion. This place is not designed to convince you. It is designed to show you, or perhaps to test you. The woman studies you for a moment, then gestures toward the chair. You've already seen the effect, she says. Now you will see the method. A pause. And after that, she tilts her head slightly. You will decide what to do with it. You hesitate, because something inside you understands. This is the point of no return. The first studio showed you what you wanted to see. This one may show you what you don't. You sit. Again. The same position. The same stillness. But everything feels different. Because tonight, you are not here to believe. You are here to understand. And that is far more dangerous. The method in plain sight. You sit in the chair again. But this time, you are not the same person. Your back is straight, your hands still, but your mind is no longer searching for comfort. It is watching. The woman does not rush. She adjusts nothing for show. No dramatic movements, no soft reassurances. Only precision. Do not move, she says. But her tone is different from the first photographer. There is no illusion in it. This is not part of the act. It is part of the demonstration. She steps behind the camera, then stops. Before we begin, she says quietly, you should understand something. A pause. What you saw last night was not unique. Your eyes remain forward, but your focus sharpens. This has been done, she continues, many times. She moves slightly, not enough to break your view, just enough that you can sense the space shifting behind you. And not always by the same hands. The room feels colder now, because the mystery is changing, from what happened to how often it happens. She reaches to the side. You hear glass. Careful. Controlled. A plate is placed into the holder. This, she says, is where it begins. Victorian photography relied on something fragile. Glass. Thin. Coated with chemicals that reacted to light. But those chemicals had a weakness. They remembered. Not perfectly. Not cleanly. But enough. A plate could carry an image, even after it had been used. She steps closer. Look at the wall, she says. You do. There is nothing there. Just shadow. Then she moves something. A subtle shift. And suddenly, a faint shape appears. Not solid. Not fully formed. But visible. A human outline. Barely there. Your breath catches. Because you recognize the effect instantly. It is the same as the photograph. The same unnatural presence. The same half-existence. How, you ask? Your voice is quieter now. Not from fear. From focus. She does not answer immediately. Instead, she walks to the side of the room and reveals it. A second glass plate. Already marked. Already holding an image. Faint. A person. Frozen in another moment. This was taken earlier, she says. Not for you. A pause. But it can be used for you. She slides it into position. Carefully. Layered. Aligned just enough. Not to match. But to overlap. Now, she says. We expose again. The camera clicks. Soft. Final. And in that instant, you understand. This is not magic. This is construction. Layer over layer. Light over light. Memory over memory. A ghost is not summoned. It is assembled. But then, she does something unexpected. She steps behind you. Not hidden. Not subtle. Deliberate. You feel her presence. Real. Close. Then, she speaks. Right behind your ear. Sometimes, a whisper is all it takes. Your body tenses. Instinctively. Even though you know she is there. Even though this is demonstration. Your mind reacts the same way. Because the human body does not separate knowledge from sensation. It responds. Always. She steps away, returns to the front, and watches you. Now you understand the second layer, she says. Your breathing is slower now, but deeper, because something inside you has shifted again. This is not just photography. This is psychology. And the two together are far more powerful than either alone. She lifts the developed plate, shows it to you. There you are. And behind you, a figure. Placed. Constructed. Believable. You nod slightly, because now, you see it, clearly. But she is not finished. Most people stop here, she says. They think the trick is in the plate. A pause. They are wrong. The room stills. Because you feel it. There is more. Something deeper. Do you remember last night? She asks. Yes. The sound behind you? You hesitate. Yes. The movement? Yes. The whisper? You swallow. Yes. She watches you carefully. That part, she says, was not the camera. Silence. Heavy. Precise. Because now, the last piece begins to fall into place. A second exposure explains the image. A whisper explains the fear. But together, they create belief. She steps closer again. But sometimes, she lowers her voice. They don't need to fake that part. Your heart tightens. Because that sentence does not belong to the demonstration. It belongs to something else. Something she is not fully explaining. You look at her. For the first time, you see hesitation. Very slight. But real. And that, she says, is why this became dangerous. She turns away. Places the plate down. Carefully. As if ending the lesson. But not the story. Because now, you understand two things. First, the image can be created. Second, the experience can be controlled. But there is a third question. The one she did not answer. What happens when neither is controlled? You stand slowly. The chair creaks beneath you. And for a brief moment, you feel it again. That same sensation. Behind you. You turn. Quickly. Nothing. Only the empty room. The camera. The light. The stillness. But your pulse does not settle. Because now, you know how to create a ghost. But that does not mean every ghost is created. And somewhere in this system, between deception and belief, something else may still exist. Watching. Waiting. Not for the camera, but for you. The woman speaks again. Now you have a choice. You do not turn back yet. Because part of you is still looking at the empty space behind you. Walk away, she says, and forget this. A pause. Or continue and find out who built it. Your reflection faintly appears in the camera lens. Distorted. Layered. Almost like a second face. And in that moment, you realize something. This was never just a trick. It was a system. And systems have architects. The names behind the glass. You do not leave, not yet. The chair is empty behind you. The camera is still. The demonstration is over, but the room has not released you. Who built it? You ask. Your voice sounds steadier than you feel. The woman does not answer immediately. She moves to the shelf, not the one with plates, another one, lower, less visible. From it, she takes a small wooden box, worn, handled often. She sets it on the table between you, does not open it yet. Most people think this was invention, she says, an idea that appeared all at once. A pause. It wasn't. She opens the box. Inside, photographs. Dozens. Some neatly stacked, some loose, some marked with notes in ink. You step closer. She lifts one, hands it to you. A portrait, Victorian, formal. A man seated. Behind him, a figure. Faint, but familiar. Not to the man. To you. You've seen this face before. In another photograph. Not yours, but similar. Too similar. The same plate, you say quietly. She nods. Or the same image. She hands you another. A woman. Different sitter. Same ghost. Again. And again. Faces repeat. Not perfectly. But enough. Enough to be recognized by someone looking closely. Which most people do not. Because they are not looking for repetition. They are looking for meaning. That is the first layer of the network, she says. Images. A pause. Shared. You look up. Between studios? She nods. Yes. The word lands heavier than expected. Because now, it is no longer one deception. It is collaboration. Victorian London was full of photographers, some talented, some desperate, some struggling to compete in a growing market. Photography was becoming cheaper, more accessible. Portraits were no longer a luxury, only for the wealthy. And that changed everything. Because when something becomes common, it must become extraordinary to remain valuable. And what is more extraordinary than seeing the dead? They traded them, she continues. Glass plates, negatives, effects. Across cities, across countries. A beat. You could sit here and receive a ghost from Boston. The thought chills something deep inside you. Because that means the figure behind you last night may not belong to anyone in that room, may not belong to you, may not belong to London at all. You look back at the photographs. They are not evidence of the dead. They are inventory. And the second layer? You ask. Her eyes meet yours. People. The word is quieter, but sharper. Not all of them are aware, she says. Some photographers believe what they are doing. Some only suspect. And some, she stops, know exactly what they are creating. You think of the man at your door, the card, the way he spoke. Not part of this, but not separate from it either. And you ask. A long pause. I left, she says. Not a full answer, but enough. You look at the box again. Why keep these? To remember what it is, she says. Not what it pretends to be. A silence settles between you. Then, you notice something. One photograph. Different from the others. You pick it up. A group portrait. 3 people. And behind them, a figure. But this one is sharper. More defined. Less like an accident. More like presence. This one is not the same, you say. She does not answer immediately. And that delay is enough. Where did this come from? You ask. Her voice is lower now. Not from a reused plate? A pause. And not from a controlled exposure. The room tightens again. Because now, the pattern breaks. You said everything could be explained, you say. I said most of it could, she corrects. Your fingers tighten around the photograph. Because this is different. Some images appeared. She chooses her words carefully, without preparation, without control, without intent. The implications settle slowly, heavier than anything before. Because now, the system has a flaw, or something inside it that does not follow the rules. You place the photograph back into the box, carefully, as if it might react to being touched too long. This is why you came, she says. Not a question. You didn't come to believe. You came because something didn't fit. You look at her, and for the first time, you nod, because that is true. The image last night, it could be explained. But the feeling, the presence, the timing, that did not belong to the method. And now, you are no longer sure which part you are trying to understand. The fraud, or the possibility that something real has been hiding inside it. The woman closes the box. Firm. Final. If you continue, she says, you will not only uncover the trick, you will uncover what it attracted. A pause. And that is far worse. You step back slightly. The room feels smaller now. Not because of the walls, because of the implications. This is no longer just about deception. It is about something that grew around the deception, something that used it, or found its way into it. The network of quiet rooms, the shared plates, the repeated faces, all of it created a space, and spaces can be occupied. You glance once more at the camera. The lens, dark, reflective. And for a moment, you think you see something move inside it. Not a reflection. Not quite. You blink. It's gone. But the feeling remains. Watching. Waiting. Not for the next photograph. For the next person. The image that should not exist. You do not step away from the table. Not completely. Your body shifts back, but your attention stays fixed on the box. Closed now, but not silent. You've seen it, the woman says, not asking. You nod, slowly. That image, you hesitate. It doesn't belong to the others. She studies you for a moment, measuring something. Good, she says quietly. A strange word. Good. As if noticing the flaw is part of the test. She moves to the far wall, not toward the camera, not toward the plates. To a cabinet, locked. The key comes from her sleeve, hidden. Not for secrecy, for control. The lock turns with a soft, deliberate click. She opens it. Inside, more photographs. But these are not arranged. They are separated. Each one placed with space around it. Not part of a collection. Part of a record. These, she says, are the ones we could not explain. The air changes again. Subtly. But enough. Because now, you are no longer studying deception. You are standing at the edge of something else. She hands you one. You take it. Reluctantly. The paper is older. More worn. Handled less often. As if it is not meant to be looked at. A man stands in the image. Alone. No staged composition. No decorative background. Just a wall. A chair. Stillness. And behind him, something. Not faint, not soft, not layered, present, sharp enough to cast a suggestion of shadow. Your breath stops. Because this is not like the others. This is not a ghost made of memory. This is something that occupies space. Who took this, you ask? No one who intended to, she says. A pause. It was discovered after. The room feels colder because that removes intention. And intention was the one thing that made the system safe. Without intention, there is no control. This was not a reused plate, she continues. Not a double exposure, not a staged figure. You look closer, for flaws, for misalignment, for softness. There is none. The figure stands with the same clarity as the man. Different posture, but the same reality. How, you ask? This time, she does not answer at all. Instead, she takes another photograph, places it beside the first. Different person, different room, same figure, not similar, not approximate, the same. A shape you cannot fully describe, because your mind cannot decide what it is seeing. Human? Almost, but not entirely. The proportions are slightly wrong. The stillness too complete. The presence too deliberate. This appeared in 3 separate studios, she says. Different cities. Different photographers. A pause. And none of them noticed it while taking the image. You feel something shift inside you. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition. Because now, the system is no longer just flawed. It is being used. Or entered. Victorian photography had already created something unique. Rooms designed for stillness. Long exposures. Subjects trained not to move. Silence. Expectation. A perfect environment for suggestion. But also a perfect environment for something else. Something that does not require motion. Something that does not require attention. Something that only needs time. You're thinking it now, she says. You don't respond. Because you are. If the system created space, then something could occupy it. Not intentionally, but inevitably. Like water filling a hollow, or shadow filling a room. You place the photographs back on the table. Carefully, because touching them too long feels wrong. This is why I left, she says. Her voice is quieter now. I understood the method. I exposed the method. But this... She looks at the images. This remained. A silence follows. Heavy. Because there is no explanation. Not yet. And the others, you ask. The ones still working. She meets your eyes. They ignore it. Or they explain it away. Or, she pauses. They begin to use it. That last sentence lands differently. Because it changes the direction. This is not just something that appears. It is something that can be exploited. Just like grief. Just like belief. You step back from the table. The room feels smaller again. Not because of walls, because of possibility. If someone learns to combine both layers, the method, and whatever this is, then the result would be something far more powerful. Not just a convincing image, but something that cannot be dismissed. Something that feels real. Because part of it might be. You look toward the camera again. The lens catches a reflection. Your face. And behind it, for just a fraction of a second, something else. You turn. Nothing. Empty space. But the delay. The slight delay before your reflection corrected itself remains. And now, you are no longer certain whether you are observing the system or being observed inside it. The woman closes the cabinet, locks it. This is where most people stop, she says. They learn the trick. They see the flaw. And they leave. A pause. But you, she studies you, are still here. You don't answer. Because the truth is already clear. You are not here for the photograph anymore. You are here for the gap. The space between what can be explained and what cannot. And somewhere in that space, something is waiting. The addiction to the second face. You leave the cabinet closed, but the images do not leave you. They follow. Not physically, not like a shadow. More precisely, like a thought that refuses to complete itself. You stand in the center of the room, the camera to your right, the chair behind you, the locked cabinet in front. And for the first time, you feel something you did not expect. Not fear, not curiosity. Pull. A quiet, persistent pull. Most people come once, the woman says. Her voice is softer now. Not instructive, reflective. They sit. They see something. They leave. A pause. And then, she looks at you carefully. They come back. You understand that immediately. Not because she explains it, because you feel it. The photograph is no longer just an object. It is unfinished. It suggests something, but does not complete it. And the human mind cannot tolerate that for long. It needs resolution. It needs certainty. Or at least, a stronger illusion. They want to see more clearly, she continues. They want the face to be sharper. They want recognition. Her words slow, measured. They want it to look back at them. The room seems to tighten again. Because now, you are no longer thinking about technique. You are thinking about need. And need can be cultivated. Victorian mourning did not end quickly. It stretched. Months, years, sometimes a lifetime. Clothing remained black. Homes remained dim. Lives remained partially paused. And in that long silence, people searched for continuation. Not memory. Presence. Something that suggested the person was not entirely gone. Photography gave them that. At first, a simple likeness. Then, something more. And once that more appeared, it became difficult to return to less. They come back, the woman says again. Again and again. You picture it. The same chair. The same stillness. The same instructions. But now, with expectation sharpened. With belief already forming. And that changes everything. Because the second time, the sitter is not neutral. They are searching. And when someone is searching, they begin to see what is not there. Or worse, they begin to invite it. What happens then, you ask? She does not answer immediately. Instead, she walks to the cabinet again, unlocks it. Not all the way. Just enough to reach inside. She pulls out a single photograph. different from the others. Worn. Handled often. Not preserved. Used. She hands it to you. You take it. Reluctantly. A man. Seated. Familiar setting. Studio chair. Neutral expression. But his eyes are wrong. Not empty. Focused. Too focused. As if he's looking at something that is not in the room. And behind him, a figure. Clearer than before. Closer. Almost touching. What is this? You ask. Her voice lowers. He came 9 times. The number lands harder than expected. 9. Not once. Not twice. 9. Each time, she continues, the image changed. You look again. The figure behind him leans slightly forward. Too deliberate. Too aware. He believed it was his wife, she says. And by the 7th sitting, she stops. He began to speak to it. The room goes still. Because that is the moment something breaks. Not the illusion. The boundary. He stopped sleeping, she continues. Stopped eating. Stopped distinguishing between the photograph and the room. You feel it now. Not as fear. As recognition. Because the pull you felt earlier is the beginning of that same path. A desire to see more. To understand more. To confirm. To complete the image. And the 9th time, you ask, her eyes meet yours. He didn't come back. Silence. Heavy. Final. What happened to him? She hesitates. Just enough. To him, a pause. Or to the thing he believed he saw. That is not an answer. But it is worse than one. Because it leaves both possibilities open. You place the photograph down. Carefully. Because now, the danger is no longer theoretical. It is not about deception. It is not about fraud. It is about what happens when belief is reinforced repeatedly. When the same image evolves. When the same presence grows clearer. When the line between observation and participation disappears. You step back. The room feels different again. Not smaller. Closer. As if something has moved nearer. Without making a sound. You feel it, she says. Not a question. You nod. Because you do. The same pull. But now, you understand what it leads to. And that changes it. Or it should. Unless understanding is not enough. Unless the system was never designed to be resisted. Only entered. You glance once more at the camera. The lens reflects the room. The chair. The table. You. And for a fraction of a second, something behind you. Closer than before. You turn. Nothing. Hey, but this time you are not reassured. Because now, you know how the image is made. And you know how the mind is guided. But you no longer know which part you are inside. The last meeting. You should leave. The thought comes clearly. Simple. Smart. And yet, you don't move. Because something in you has already crossed the line. Not when you saw the photo. Not when you understood the method. But when you realized that understanding doesn't eliminate the feeling. The pull remains. Quieter now. But deeper. The woman is watching you. She's not stopping you. She's not leading you. Because now, it's no longer an instruction. It's a choice. You're thinking about it. she says. You don't answer. Because you're thinking. Another seat. Another. Not believing. Confirming. To fully test the system. To see what happens when you consciously step into it. This is how it starts, she says quietly. Not with belief. With curiosity. She steps back. Leaves the chair empty. Available. Waiting. Now you understand the method, she continues. You know what can be done. Pause. And what cannot be explained. The room freezes. Because now, you are standing on the edge of something dangerous. Not ignorance. Knowledge. And knowledge does not always protect. Sometimes, it removes the last reason to stop. Victorian records did not always speak openly about what happened in these rooms. Not in newspapers, not in official reports, but there was testimony. Private. Scattered. People who returned too many times. People who began to see figures outside the photographs. People who insisted that they were being followed by something that had only appeared on the glass at first. One story described a woman who visited several studios throughout London, not because she doubted, because she wanted the image to improve. Each photograph is clearer. Each figure is closer. Until, one day, the figure no longer appeared behind her. It appeared next to her. In the room. Not fixed. Present. After that, she stopped talking. Not suddenly. Gradually. As if the conversation had become unnecessary. Because something else had taken its place. Another story. Of a man who refused to sit down again. Burned all the photographs. Eliminate all traces. And yet, continued to see the same figure in the reflections. Windows, mirrors, water. Places where images intersect. Places where reality is subtle. You feel it now. That same subtlety. The space between what is and what could be. A chair stands in front of you. Unoccupied. But not empty. You come closer. Slowly. Because now, it's not about the past anymore. It's about what's next. Your hand touches the back of the chair. Cold. Usually. You've been here before. Not in this room. But in this moment. The decision to sit. The decision to remain still. The decision to let something happen. The woman is silent. She waits. Because she knows that part cannot be influenced. It has to come from you. You sit down. Again. The tree presses against your back. The air immediately becomes heavier. Not because it has changed. Because you have changed. Don't move, she says. The same words. But now, they mean something different. Because you understand what movement does and what stillness allows. The camera is set up. The plate is prepared. But your attention is not focused on the process. He is behind you. Waiting. Listening. A sound. Soft. Almost nothing. But enough. A shift. Floorboards. The same as before. But this time, you do not question it. Because now, you know it can be created. Or not created. A breath. Close. Too close. Your body reacts before your mind does. A tightening. A stillness that is no longer voluntary. You do not move. You cannot. Because something inside you understands. If you turn now, you will break something. Not the image. Something else. The camera clicks. And in that instant, you feel it. Not as sound. Not as movement. As presence. Direct. Immediate. Behind you. Closer than before. The moment stretches. Longer than it should. Longer than a photograph requires. And in that extended stillness, you realize something. This is not the same as the first sitting, because this time you were expecting it, and expectation changes what is allowed. The air shifts, subtly, but enough. And for a fraction of a second, you are certain that if you reached back, you would touch something. Not air, not absence. Something with shape, with position, with intent. The moment ends. The camera settles. The room exhales. But you do not move. Because now, you are no longer waiting for the photograph. You are waiting to understand what just happened. And somewhere behind you, in the space you cannot see, something may still be there. The shape behind you, you don't move, not right away, because something tells you that this moment matters. More than a photograph. More than an explanation. This very second is the answer you've been looking for. The chair beneath you creaks ever so slightly. Your breathing is slow, controlled. But your body knows something your mind hasn't yet accepted. You're not alone. This is the same moment, the same position, the same stillness, the same space behind you, the hook, the scene that started it all. But now, you are not the same person inside it. Now you understand the layers. An image can be constructed. The mind can be controlled. Experience can be staged. But this part is happening again. And this time, you are watching it. Disbelieving. Watching. Sound. Closer. This time it is not the floor. Something softer. Fabric. Or skin. Movement. You feel it. Not on your body. Next to it. A little out of touch. Your hand grips the armrest lightly. Instinct. The desire to turn. To confirm. To interrupt the moment. But you don't. Because right now, you understand something critically important. The system depends on not seeing. On suggestion. On uncertainty. And if you turn back too soon, you will only see what it allows. The camera plate is removed. The woman is silent. She is watching you, not the process. You. Because she knows that is where the real answer appears, not on the glass, as a reaction. Stand still, she says quietly, but not as an instruction, as a warning. The air changes again. It's colder now. Unimaginable. It feels. Presence. Closer. Intentional. And then, for the first time, you fully understand it. The whisper of the first night. Movement. Breath. It wasn't accidental. They were part of the structure. But this is not being built. It responds. You breathe in slowly, because now you are no longer trying to see. You are trying to find. To understand where it exists. And the answer comes, not through sight. Through absence. There is a place behind you, where the air behaves wrongly, where sound softens, where space seems occupied, without form. That is where it is. You speak, quietly. Who's there? The words feel wrong as soon as they leave your mouth, because the system was never designed for the subject to ask questions, only to receive silence, but not an empty silence, the silence of expectation. Then something happens, not dramatically, not noticeable, subtly, but undeniably. The space behind you shifts forward, closer, and in that movement, you feel it. Not a touch, but an outline, as if something knew how close it could get. Your body remains still, but your mind is changing, because now the final awareness is forming. The system didn't create it. The system discovered it. All these rooms, all these long exposures, all these still bodies, all this silence, they created a condition, a space where something could exist without interruption, a place where it could be seen without having to move. And over time, it learned a pattern, learned to expect, learned the presence of an observer. You are not being shown something. You are being observed. The woman steps forward, carefully, slowly, as if entering the same space you are now aware of. Do you feel it? She asks. You nod, because there is no point denying it now. She looks at the empty space behind you, not confused, not surprised, recognizing. That is the part they ignore, she says, or exploit. A pause. They think they are creating ghosts, but they are only creating. She stops, as if the final word matters. Access. The word lands. Heavy. Final. Because now, everything connects. The deception, the repetition, the stillness, the expectation. All of it, building a doorway, not intentionally, but effectively. And now, you are sitting inside it. The presence behind you remains, not aggressive, not violent, but aware. And for the first time, you understand the real danger. Not that people believed in ghosts, but that something else began to believe in them too. What the camera has learned. You don't move, even now, because if you move, you disrupt the moment. And this moment is the answer. A presence remains behind you, doesn't press, doesn't touch, waits, as if studying something. Not your body, your stillness. The woman doesn't interrupt. She stands just beyond the edge of this space, careful, measured. She's seen it before, more than once, not completely, but enough to recognize it. Now you understand, she says quietly. You don't answer, because understanding is incomplete. It's forming, slowly, like an image developing in a liquid. Victorian photography didn't just capture light. It captured time, long exposures, seconds stretched into something else, moments held open longer than they should have been. And within those stretched moments, something extraordinary happened. The human body froze. The room grew quiet. Expectation became focused. And for a short period, the normal flow of traffic stopped. That's what the system created. Not ghosts, conditions. The presence shifts again. Closer. Not aggressive. Interesting. And suddenly, you understand something that was hidden beneath everything else. It's not something that appears to you. It's something that appears through you. The awareness is quiet, but absolute. All these photographs, all these repetitive sittings, all these rooms full of grief. They didn't evoke anything. They taught something. Taught him to recognize stillness. Taught him to recognize attention. Taught him to recognize the human form when it stops moving. And over time, it began to respond. Not intentionally, not consciously, but consistently. You feel it now. The presence is no longer just behind you. It is aligned with you, adjusting to your stillness, learning your form. Your breathing slows. 'Cause instinct tells you that's the most important part. If you move, it disappears. If you stay, it stays. The camera is still in front of you, uncovered. You watch. And for the first time, you understand that this is not just a recording. It's part of a system. The tool that taught something to exist in that moment. A device that kept her still long enough for something else to enter her. The woman steps closer. Carefully. You should stand, she says. Her voice is firm now. Not gentle. Not suggestive. Confident. Because she understands something you're just beginning to feel. The longer you stay, the clearer it becomes. You hesitate because a part of you doesn't want to break the moment, doesn't want to lose the answer. And this, the last trap. Not faith, not deception, affection. You stand, slowly. The chair lets you go. The air changes instantly. Presence disappears. Doesn't disappear. Doesn't retreat. Disappeared. As if it never existed. A U-turn? Nothing. Only empty space. The same space that moments ago was occupied. You breathe again, fully. Because now you understand the final truth. Victorian ghost photography was not proof of the dead. And it was not simply fraud. It was something far stranger. A system that accidentally created conditions where something learned how to appear. Not a spirit, not a soul, not a person. A presence shaped by observation. A response to stillness. A form that exists only when someone is waiting to see it. You look at the camera one last time. Dark. Silent. But no longer innocent. Because now you know, it was never about capturing ghosts. It was about teaching something. How to be seen. The woman closes the lens. The room exhales. And the system ends. Or appears to. Yet because as you leave, as the door opens, as the outside world returns, you catch something. Not behind you. Not in the room. In the glass of the door. Your reflection. And just for a fraction of a second, before it aligns, something stands slightly out of place, matching you, but not entirely. You blink. It's gone. But the understanding remains. You were never just observing the system. You were part of it. And now, Even outside the room, it may still be watching, waiting for the next moment when you stop moving. Because this is not a horror story. This is history, and history does not stay in the past. It learns, and sometimes it looks back.